Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I am testing out a vehicle that would probably have a lot of enthusiasts salivating because right behind me is the all-new 2020 V60 Polestar. That's right, the Polestar V60 wagon is back after a 2-year hiatus. It's been reborn as a plug-in hybrid with over 400 horsepower and of course standard all-wheel drive. So the question I want to answer, if you guys are in the market for a really fast wagon, is this the one that you've been waiting for? That's what we're here to find out. So obviously you guys are pretty familiar with this generation of the V60 and the S60. I've actually had a chance to test this vehicle out a few times since it was first introduced last year, built of course on the scalable product architecture. It replaced a vehicle that dated back to 2010, so it was a really old car. And this thing is one of the most gorgeous looking sedans and wagons that you can buy on the market. I've already tested the V60 Cross Country earlier this year. This is now the Polestar version, and now it's called the Polestar Engineered. This is designed to sit at the very tippy top of the V60 and S60 hierarchy. And as you can see, looking at the styling of this vehicle, you would be hard-pressed to tell that this is the high-performance model. That's the one beauty about Volvo's Polestar Performance Division, which of course is also in the process of being rebranded as an electric performance arm of Volvo. It's becoming their own brand, but they of course are still taking regular gasoline-powered Volvos, but now of course they are plug-in hybrid models, part of the T8 engine family. Now you can see here, looking at the front fascia, I love the styling of this vehicle. It's really classy, it's really elegant. You can see you've got the standard full LED headlights with the Thor's Hammer LED daytime running light and turn signals. The Polestar versions, you'll be able to tell because of this blacked out honeycomb style grille with that white Polestar badge. Polestar itself has kind of been rebranding themselves and introducing a new look to the badge, to their colors. The previous generation model, which was discontinued in 2018, had blue badges. That was their signature color, and as you can see, it's been redone for 2020. Now looking at the side profile of this vehicle, you can see I love the lines of the V60. It just kind of reminds me of like a stretched out hatchback. It's not quite as tall, actually about 15 inches lower versus the XC60 Polestar, which they also offer as an SUV, of course. This thing is easily one of the most beautiful looking wagons that you can buy today, so I'm really happy to see that Volvo applied the Polestar to the beautiful wagon. Now looking at the wheels, these probably are one of the most beautiful looking wheels you can buy on the market today. They're a 19-inch design. They're wrapped in two 35/40 width tires. You can see the Polestar versions come with their own 6-piston Brembo brakes with the signature gold calipers on all 4 corners. It's a really beautiful looking car that is, again, very sleeper status, very subtle, and that's the beauty about this thing. Now, looking at the rest of the proportions, it's around 187.4 inches long, which is the same length as the sedan. However, it really just looks much longer in person. In fact, I love the overall proportions of this thing. I think Volvo did a really great job with the styling of the V60. You can see above this car, it has a panoramic sunroof that's included as standard equipment. There's really only one way to get the Polestar, and that's basically fully loaded. There are no options to add. You take your pick between 4 colors. This is the gray color, which I'd probably go for the white, but the gray is also a really good look to it. Now, looking at the rear, you can see the taillights have that signature Volvo design where they're very tall. They're a full LED taillight design, and of course down here you can see it's got its own Polestar, tuned exhaust system, but you can't deny that the engine still doesn't sound all that great. Unlike the previous generation, which offered a turbocharged inline 6, this turbo supercharged 4-cylinder just doesn't sound quite as good. You can see there's also another Polestar badge here at the back, but it is a very subtle car. You're not going to know that this is the performance version unless you're specifically looking for those badges. Now, opening up the cargo area, you can see this is the whole reason why you want to go with the V60. You get around just under 30 cubic feet of cargo space with the second row seats up. If you want to fold down everything, Volvo says that you get around 60 cubic feet of space, which is, again, much more than what you get in the sedan and pretty much approaching that of what you're going to get in the XC60. Now, just like the exterior of the V60 Polestar, the interior has some pretty subtle changes to let you know that you're driving the special model. Obviously, the most obvious one you're going to notice is when you go for the seat belt. This is the new Polestar gold color that you find on the brake calipers, of course, and in the seat belts. There's not even any contrast, gold stitching in here. I kind of wish that Volvo had done that. Instead, they went with a, white stitching. This black interior with the Nappa leather is your only color combination as well. So I hope you like black because Volvo doesn't offer any other other specific colors on the interior. But as you can see, just like the regular V60 and S60, if you guys like Volvo interiors, you're going to really like this because it is a nice, high quality, luxurious place to spend time. When I shut the door over here, the door has a nice solid thunk. Remember, this is built on the new scalable product architecture. Now here's the key fob for the V60 Polestar. You can see it's just like every other Volvo key. I'm surprised they didn't put a Polestar badge here as opposed to the Volvo badge. Volvo puts their engine start stop switch down here by the shifter, and you actually just put your foot on the brake and then turn this, twist it over to the right. But as you can see, remember, this is a plug-in hybrid, so it doesn't have any traditional starter noise when you start this thing up. Now, of course, like I said earlier, these seats are the only, seats that you can get. They're a Nappa leather. They're a little bit more aggressively bolstered. They offer 3-level heat and 2-person memory on both sides, which is great. They adjust in like 16 different ways. They're comfortable, supportive. I love the little Swedish flag there on the side of the seats, but you should know that if you guys want the massaging seats or cooled seats, Volvo does not offer it on the Polestar version, so you have to go for like an inscription trim level, to get that feature. Now the steering wheel, you can see, is pretty much the same as other Volvos, although I do notice that the rim itself is a little bit more thick, which does feel good in your hands. I'm surprised that Volvo didn't go with like a flat bottom wheel with like a Polestar badge over here or a Polestar badge here. It would have been nice for them to do that. The steering wheel itself is just a manual tilt telescoping. Remember, Volvo doesn't do the power tilt telescoping even on like their most expensive models, which is a little bit annoying. In terms of the materials, you can see you've got the real genuine leather stitching on the dash, this metal trim here with aluminum trim. It's soft touch plastic down here on the lower part of the dash. It also carries over here to the door panels, which I have to say the door panel doesn't feel all that high quality. It's soft touch, but I'm surprised they didn't carry over the real leather stitching there. It's leather stitching over here where you'd rest your elbows, and of course the window switches are automatic one touch for all 4. That's what you'd expect. They also feel very high quality. I love the Bowers & Wilkins sound. It's standard on this car. It has 1,400 watts of power. Typically this is a $3,200 option, and it's standard on the Polestar, and it sounds fantastic. It rivals that of all the other high-end European brands. This 12-inch digital display here is slightly customizable. I have the display look on the performance setting here, so it gives you the red colored rings. You can also change that color when you go into the menu settings. This, of course, here is the 9-inch Volvo Sensus Connect head unit, which, you guys have been pretty familiar with this. They've introduced it about 5 years ago. Volvo has been slowly, beefing this up. As you guys saw earlier, there is the Apple CarPlay. This is the new iOS 14. It is looking a little bit small nowadays. I think Volvo needs to expand this to give us like a 12-inch display now as the competition is kind of moving forward. You can see you can swipe over to the right to access your apps, swipe over to the left here to change a couple of settings, pull this down here to go into your actual vehicle settings where you can customize a few things there. There's a home button over there, which of course is nice. This car's infotainment system definitely requires a little bit of a learning curve, but once you figure it out, you can see it's relatively easy to use. And then just some of the things are kind of buried into menus. For example, if I hit this, there's your heated steering wheel and your heated seat controls. So some of it could be, better organized, so I don't have to go into these deep menus and give me more hard buttons. There's a little knob here for your audio system, for your volume, tuning a button over here. You have your hazard switch, defrost. There could have been more buttons over here. And then of course, this shifter here controls the 8-speed automatic. It doesn't have the crystal shifter that you get in some of the other T8 models, but when I put the vehicle into reverse, you can see there's your backup camera and your top-down 360 camera, which is a very good resolution. So Volvo has done a pretty good job there. Have no complaints, really. Their driver assistance tech is also standard, where you've got the Pro Pilot Assist, or Pilot Assist. Pro Pilot Assist is Nissan. It gets super confusing. And then your drive modes over here, you can see there's an all-wheel drive mode, a pure, which is like an eco mode, hybrid, individual, and then the Polestar engineering mode, which changes that into attack, and the engine starts back up. The 4-cylinder has a slightly raspy note, but it still kind of just sounds like a vacuum cleaner. It doesn't sound all that inspiring, but we'll go into the test drive later and we'll test that out. This is a nice padded area here where there's more leather stitching. I don't love how this is very shallow. The reason why this is shallow is because Volvo actually stuffs the 11.6 kilowatt-hour battery pack down the middle of the center tunnel here. So this is why it's raised up. This is also why this model doesn't have 4-zone climate control. You only get a 2-zone. You can get the 4-zone on the Inscription model, which would be nice as well. You can see the glove box is a pretty decent size. It's stamped. It's lined with felt. I like the rearview mirror here. It's a very classy frameless design. And then above me, you've got this standard panoramic sunroof, which does let in a lot of light. So this is, again, a really nice place to spend time. It has some subtle differences, but you should know that storage is a little bit lacking and it requires a little bit of a learning curve for the Sensus Connect head unit. Now, getting into the back seat, remember the V60 is actually their compact sedan. They don't have a subcompact sedan here in America or a hatchback, but this is, again, based off of the S60 sedan, so the V60's legroom isn't quite as big as what you're gonna find in some mid-size wagons. But you can see, getting inside this back seat, at 5'7", I actually have some pretty good headroom here. I didn't have to duck my head at all, and when you climb back here, Volvo says there's around 35.7 inches of legroom back here, which is actually not bad. The seat actually feels a little bit on the lower end. When I shut the door, it has the same solid thunk. You have the same nice materials with those metal speaker covers, and Volvo gives you these two, netted mat pockets. But surprisingly, there's no rear seat air vents, no heated rear seats, of course, because remember the battery lives underneath here. That's why you've got this very tall hump. But if you fold this down, you get nice armrest here, which gives you a little bit of storage. You got cup holders here, but no USB ports. So the back seat back here is pretty Spartan, aside from, just a power outlet here, but I actually was looking around. There's no vents in the center. Volvo actually puts the vents over on the side. So you at least do have rear seat vents. You have LED lighting back here, but it would be nice if they would include some USB charging ports. At least the big sunroof does let in a lot of light, so it doesn't feel completely dark in here. And of course, looking underneath the hood of the new V60 Polestar, this is the whole reason why you went with a Polestar, because it comes with the top powertrain in the V60 family. This is the T8 powertrain, which combines a turbocharged, supercharged, and electrified 4-cylinder engine. Now, the 2-liter turbo supercharged engine delivers around 328 horsepower on its own. That's a little bit more than what you're going to get in the regular T8 that I've tested in like an XC90, for example, or if you get a non-Polestar badged vehicle. But it also has an electric motor at the front of the front axle. This gas engine only powers the front wheels. The electric motor at the front makes 46 horsepower. There's a separate electric motor at the rear that delivers 87 horsepower. Now, when you combine the outputs together, Volvo says this makes 415 horsepower, which is about 53 more horsepower than the previous generation V60 Polestar, and 494 pound-feet of torque. So nearly 500 pound-feet of torque on this wagon makes this thing a monster. Volvo says you'll be able to get to 60 in 4.3 seconds, which is actually a tad slower versus the previous generation. You can blame that to the weight of this thing. It weighs just under 4,500 pounds, which is over 550 pounds heavier than the previous generation, which didn't have all the battery packs. Now, speaking of the battery, it is an 11.6 kilowatt hour battery pack, so it's a little bit on the small side, but Volvo says because it's a plug-in hybrid, you'll be able to recharge this thing on a level 1 charger overnight in around 10 hours, and it'll deliver around 22 miles of electric-only range. So that is pretty decent, although I was hoping that Volvo would at least break 30 miles of EV range. You can blame, again, the small battery pack. Now, of course, fuel economy is also slightly better versus if you guys just go for a regular V60. It's rated at 28 in the city, 33 on the highway, and 30 combined. That's about a 5 mpg improvement over the all-wheel drive T5 powertrain, so that's not bad. All of this power goes out through an 8-speed automatic transmission, so thankfully you don't have to deal with a CVT. And also, surprisingly, Volvo says that this wagon will tow a maximum of 2,000 pounds. Now, of course, I've had an opportunity to drive the newest generation of Volvo vehicles a few times, so I'm pretty familiar with the T8 powertrain. I have to say, giving you the ability to kind of cruise along at low speeds in electric-only mode, or at higher speeds as well, is one of the cool things that reminds you, this is the modern world that we live in. We've got these plug-in performance hybrid vehicles that not only, give us this ability to do that, but they add performance as well. Now, of course, this is the Polestar car, so I'm going to switch the drive mode over here to Polestar Engineered, which is the sport version, or the sport tuning. It turns the gas engine on and gives me a tack, as you can see, but once you do that, ooh, this thing has an insane amount of torque, nearly 500 pound-feet of torque. And when you combine that, of course, with the gas engine, with the electric motors, with the turbo supercharger, once that all kicks in, ooh, this thing feels quick. Now, there is a noticeable delay as you're waiting for the turbocharger to spool up, as you're waiting for the transmission to shift. There's a lot of components here that have to work together to deliver that full power. Remember, Volvo says this thing will get to 60 in around 4.3 seconds. It does feel quick once everything kind of wakes up, basically. This isn't going to give you the instantaneous thrust that you might feel from a full electric car, like a Tesla, for example, but it is definitely quick, and I'm noticing that it also sounds a little bit more sonorous versus the last T6 Volvo that I drove, or a T8 that I drove, which was an XC90. This definitely feels a little bit more fun to drive and a little bit more engaging for sure. Now this has the OLED dampers, so it's got a sport tuned suspension, it's got upgraded brakes, the steering's been quickened. I am noticing that this thing feels noticeably sporty. It feels a little bit more hard edged. It feels like it's ready to, take on some corners. You could potentially take this to the track. You also do feel the weight of this thing and the size. This is a big, heavy wagon. And you're gonna notice that when you're piloting it around, going through some corners. Ooh. Wow, the speed is deceptively quick in this thing because I don't really hear much in terms of the engine, but what you just feel is just the shove that you get from all of that torque. As the revs build up, I noticed that the transmission short shifts the engine at around 6,000 RPM. It doesn't really need to keep pulling farther than that, but it is a deceptively quick car that, a lot of you are gonna drive and you're not gonna notice that you're going super quick. All right, we're from a stop here. Let's see how this thing feels off the line. Ooh. Wow. Definitely feels like a 4.5 second car. It also didn't have any lag there, which surprised me because I felt some lag, like from a roll. There's a little bit of a lag, like right now, but ooh, so much power. Really, this thing gets up to speed so fast that you're not going to notice that you're getting up to this kind of speed. But I am noticing the ride quality in this car is a little bit on the firmer side. I'm actually going to switch it over back to hybrid mode here. This will allow us to drive on electric power. Right now, the gas engine is shut off. We're only driving on EV power only, which is cool. The suspension doesn't have adjustable dampers from the drive modes. You have to go under the hood and adjust that manually, which is weird, especially on a $60,000 luxury wagon. But in this happy medium setting that it's in right now, I don't find the ride quality to be harsh. I know some people have complained it's harsh. If you're used to your soft Volvo wagon, this is going to feel noticeably firmer, but I think that the ride quality is befitting of the Polestar engineering badge that this thing has. I am noticing there's slightly more road noise that's creeping in. That's, of course, from the more aggressive tires. Visibility in this car is also excellent, and it comes standard with all of the Volvo driver assistance stuff. So I've got blind spot monitoring, we're cross traffic alert, I've got adaptive cruise control, their pilot assist, so this thing will actually steer for itself when I'm driving in stop and go traffic. It doesn't change lanes for you, however. That's something that Volvo doesn't do just yet. But, just cruising along here, if you're planning to drive the thing normally, it actually does a really good job of just being a great daily driver. And then when you want to pass somebody, ooh, there's a noticeable lag here when it's in hybrid mode. I definitely don't like how laggy it feels there when it's in hybrid mode. That's something to keep in mind. You need to keep this thing in Polestar engineering mode for it to feel much quicker, because again, I'm going to floor it. Oh, the lag is horrible there. That is just horrible, horrible, horrible when it's in regular hybrid mode. So if you want the thing to feel constantly like a Polestar model, leave it in this mode, because when I floor it there, it's definitely better, but this wagon feels a lot faster from a dead stop. Now, in terms of fuel economy, the trip computer says I've been averaging around 25 mpg, which is not bad. Not bad mpg figures. Ooh. That was the traction control that kind of kicked in because the front tires were spinning, and it kind of just clamped down everything. I don't know why it made that nice little thump noise, but you do feel somewhat of the front drive tendencies in this car, which can be a little bit annoying and alarming, especially when it makes that little thump noise. But when you drive this wagon in more of like an 8/10 fashion instead of like a 10/10 fashion, don't treat it like it's an M340i. You need to treat it more, like a more comfortable GT car. This wagon will surprise you. The seats also hold you in place really well, although I do wish that Volvo offered their massage feature. But overall, this is a very, very comfortable wagon that I think a lot of people, would be curious to drive, because this is so unique. How many times do you see like a fast wagon like this on your local roads? I just wish that Volvo would offer it in some more, you know, brighter colors. So with over 400 horsepower, standard all-wheel drive, the ability to drive this thing for about 20 miles on electric-only range, the new T8 Polestar V60 is definitely an intriguing option if you guys are looking for a performance-oriented wagon that doesn't quite stand out and say, look at me or give me a speeding ticket, especially since Volvo only offers this thing in 4 pretty neutral, kind of boring colors. But I have to say, driving around the T8 Polestar, it doesn't quite have the boring feel that I find from the other, you know, V60 and S60 models. Polestar has done what they could here to make this thing have slightly more of a soul. It still doesn't sound great, but it handles amazingly well. It gets to 60 in around 4.5 seconds, which makes this thing ridiculously quick. You can actually drive this thing in electric only mode for about 20 miles, which is a great thing, which also allows this thing to qualify for the federal tax credit and local incentives. So that's another thing that would bring the cost down of this wagon. And the ride quality is definitely on the firmer side with the OLED dampers, which are manually adjustable. But I have to say that the ride quality, I found it to be relatively comfortable. Try the ride quality out yourself to make sure that you're okay with how much firmer this rides versus like your grandfather's, you know, just regular V60. Now, speaking of which, if you guys are looking to buy the Polestar version, how much it's going to cost? Well, a regular V60 starts at over $40,000, just over 40 grand. It is pretty affordable, but of course, this is the flagship of the lineup and it starts at just over $67,000. Thankfully, there are no options to add. Everything pretty much just comes as standard. Now, once you factor in destination and the metallic paint of my tester, this one's right around $68,900. That makes this thing around $2,000 more expensive than the S60, but it's also a couple thousand less than an XC60. So I'd say that this is easily the Goldilocks of the lineup. And if you guys are looking for a Polestar badged Volvo and you want the tax credit, you want the fact that it's a plug-in hybrid, it's still pretty darn quick, easily put this one at the top of your list because you'll be driving a car that's slightly more exclusive than everything else on the road. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2020 Volvo V60 Polestar. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.